All right, today we're going to look at two books, both dealing with crime and both dealing with punishment. In fact, the first book is named Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, of course, Russian writer, written in mid-1860s. And it's a story of the student, Raskolnikov, who perpetrates a horrific crime, murder of two people. And the bulk of the book is made up of the anticipation of the crime itself, and then afterwards the weight of the crime upon Raskolnikov's conscience. And there are various figures around this figure. He's the central figure, including the detective, who very subtly suggests to Raskolnikov that in due time, murderers like the sort we see here will generally confess. So there are many set pieces, I would call them. You wouldn't call them soliloquies. I suppose they're dialogues, inner dialogue as well, that go for some time, but are very astute, psychologically very revealing. And I'm surprised that, in 1860, there was such an awareness of psychology. And it might not be that psychology was so aware, but Dostoevsky was so aware. That might be it. Anyway, it's a very interesting tale, and just for the psychological insights alone, never mind the plot. Although the plot is intriguing, Dostoevsky does a great job. It's very gripping, and suspense is registered, of course, but mostly it's the probing of the consciousness of man, and what has the conscience of man, and what has Raskolnikov to do before he's at peace, and before he can receive his punishment, which he actually does. The second book is called In Cold Blood by American writer Truman Capote. And in truth, if you swapped out both titles for these novels, it wouldn't harm anything. You could call Dostoevsky's work In Cold Blood, and you could call Truman Capote's work Crime and Punishment, because they deal with more or less the same things. Except to say that a couple of remarkable things about Truman Capote's work. He lays claim to the fact that he, with this novel, has produced what is called the first documentary novel. That is written, facts and figures and documentary, in a documentary form, written as a novel format. And of course, the world has been flooded with such books since In Cold Blood. And not all of them are writers like Truman Capote, but he follows the murder of a family, and he, as a writer, he actually goes out and looks for these killers, finds them, befriends them, writes about them, writes as knowingly and as intimately as he can, is everything around the story of this murder. I found it to be, yes, a very well-written book. I don't think Truman Capote is incapable of writing a poor sentence, but I found it a very disturbing book. I will not be reading this book twice. Whereas Crime and Punishment, I have read twice. And Crime and Punishment, another interesting thing I'd like to say about that, just if I can squeeze it in, he dealt with other things in the air in 1860, like the Superman. And the student was talking about, as he killed these people, and as he justified it later, there are people who to whom we grant this power. And so the idea of the Superman was in the air before, if you look at the publication dates of Dostoevsky and Nietzsche, well, Nietzsche didn't even start writing until 10 years after Crime and Punishment was published. So these ideas are in the air, and with Truman Capote's book, what was in the air was the idea of a new type of journalism, and he was one of the crusaders in that, and that was, as he called it, a documentary novel. Anyway, interesting books, both grim, but both by very accomplished writers. Not the sort of thing you can, not beach reading, or even nighttime reading, but worth it in the long run, absolutely, yes.